Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Martichoras. Marty is the latest hunter in SMITE and is seen in both the ADC and the mid lane role. At a competitive level, he's more of a mid laner, but he's strong enough to the point that in ranked you can play him in either role. Marty focuses mostly on power and penetration in his builds. These builds keep his basic attack strong but also amplify his already hard-hitting abilities. In terms of relics, Marty really needs both beats and Aegis, since he has no movement ability in his kit to keep himself safe. Shard-wise, you guessed it. As a hunter, Marty always wants Wing Shard. Let's dive into one of the most interesting passives in the entire game. Marty's basic attacks deal less damage than the average hunter, but he applies the damage over time which scales with his power. This is the biggest factor in why crit isn't very good on Marty and why power and penetration are. Also, anytime Marty hits enemies with basic attacks or abilities, he gains ferocity, up to 100 stacks of it, shown by this red bar in the passive bar. Although I do wish they gave you an actual number. And keep in mind, AoE abilities which hit multiple enemies will grant multiple stacks. The stacks themselves don't actually give Marty anything, although when he reaches max passive stacks, he gains a massive attack speed stim for 5 seconds, and is able to extend the stim by successfully basic attacking for up to a total of 12 seconds. Also, once this stim activates, Marty is given permanent lifesteal on both his basic attacks and abilities, and is able to stack this up to 30 times, meaning that this is something you'll be working towards stacking for a majority of the game. And even after Marty is done stacking the passive, he can still gain progress towards another stack which will proc the attack speed stem, but will of course not gain another stack if he's already maxed out at 30. On that note, should you try to time this passive stim with aggression? Yes and no. You can of course try to time your passive stim with your support or jungler for aggression, but to be honest, when the passive pops is difficult to control, so in all honesty it's best just to go full throttle with the wave pushing so you can get the lifesteal stacks instead, and only start slowing down once you get close to completing a stack so that you can have some control over when the passive stim will occur. Then after it pops, start hard pushing to get the stacks up again, and repeat. And the best option to hard push with is of course with Marty's first ability. Martichoras slowly lays down an AoE and is able to position the AoE by looking up and down, but the AoE will always creep forward from the direction Marty is looking. And this means that the ability can go far, and even better, it can be used over walls as well. The ability deals damage as it's pasted onto the ground, and then leaves an area behind which will slow and deal damage over time to any enemies currently in the area. So this means that you can use it for poke as well as zone control as well as safety, and on that same note, it means that you can clear waves with it safely as well. Naturally, the high damaging line AoE is Marty's main wave clear, but he actually has more options for wave clear if you want to use this ability to harass instead, or at the very least, you can get crafty to point it in such a way that you hit the entire wave but force the enemy lane opponent to reposition themselves. That said though, this is of course the easiest way to get some passive stacks and really hard push, and when the name of the game is just pushing waves as hard as possible, or fighting enemy gods, you can combo his first and second abilities together for a big impact. In Marty's second ability, he fires out a projectile which will pass through minions but stop on walls and gods. When this projectile finishes firing, as in reaches its max range or hits a wall or a god, it will create a small barb on the ground that, when basic attacked or hit with another one of Marty's abilities, will explode into the little AoE visible on the ground, which of course will damage and root all enemies. And if you snag an enemy god with it, the barb will obviously walk around with them. So pretty basic 2-1 combo, and then basic attacks, whether that's on a wave you're pushing or an enemy god you want to kill. Let's get some niche uses out of the way first. When clearing out buff camps or doing an objective like Pyromancer, don't forget to just 2 straight into the wall to create the AoE, then layer 1 over it for maximum damage. You can't do this on Cold Fury and Fire Giant of course, since they sit in the middle of nowhere, so on these, shoot your 2 at max distance and then layer 1 over it. There are a lot of ways you can tie the 2 abilities together in lane as well. In a one-on-one situation, you can hold on to your first ability instead and try to get a clear line in an enemy god. Then 2 them, and try to get a basic attack on them so you can root them, so that you can confirm your first ability on them and slow them. And of course, if you hit them with a 2 and they hide within their minions to avoid your basic attack, this just means that you can 1 the mini wave instead and either force them into your line of sight or have them back off the wave entirely. Then finally, you can 2 the enemy lane opponent and then just do nothing, forcing them to play on their toes and not clear the wave, while you hold on to your first ability to force them even further back. You don't need to get fancy with this combo, but as with anything, if you do the same set of moves over and over again against your lane opponent, chances are they're going to adapt to it. Of course, you don't have to interact with a lane opponent like this. When you're new to Marty, you can really just hard push the wave with your 2-1 combo, and exert your pressure from there. His wave clear when you put everything into the wave is almost impossible to deal with the current Bluestone and Transcendence build, a lot like Almazen Cobb's lane presence. Although, Almazen Cobb wishes he had something like Martichoras' third ability to keep himself safe. Martichoras spawns a small square bush. When allies enter this bush, they are completely invisible to all enemies unless they are taking or dealing damage or are CC'd, or of course, if the enemy is in the bush with them. When Marty enters these bushes, he has the same invisibility and revealing rules. However, Marty will gain movement speed while in the bush, and will maintain this movement speed for 3 seconds after leaving the bush. These bushes last forever and cannot be destroyed by enemies, for some reason, and there's no delay on when Marty can enter and exit bushes to grant himself the movement speed over and over again. Marty can have up to 3 of these bushes at the same time anywhere on the map, and naturally placing a 4th bush will remain the earliest placed bush. These bushes, especially when compounded with this 2-1 combo, are a huge problem for the enemy team. Of course, firstly, it makes laning against Marty difficult since you can sorta know where he is, but not exactly, especially once he starts getting a few bushes in lane. Typically, even though Marty's damage is formidable throughout the game, you want to play it safe until your bushes are all set up. And really, where you want to place them is purely in the moment. Just place one at your feet as they come off of cooldown, but you tend to want to place them away from the jungle to make yourself more difficult to gank. And on that note, don't place a bush just to place a bush. The cooldown is exceptionally long, so when you're in good standing in lane or are playing back for whatever reason, don't place them willy-nilly. You really only want to spam them out when you first get the ability, and then meter the usage of it out from there. Don't forget that also, this ability is a nightmare in objective fights, but especially during sieges. You can place bushes for your team around the Gold Fury and especially Fire Giant, so you can conceal the positions of your tanks, but especially mages, so that they can look for an engage or something like an ultimate while in your bushes. It makes going for objectives against a team who has a Martichoras extremely difficult, as is sieging both when defending and attacking. As the Marty player, you want to create a sort of line where you can both play forward and retreat back as well, and place bushes for specific teammates as needed to cover their movement. As usual with an ADC, keep an eye on your tanks so you can always give them the bush they need. Obviously though, don't put any bushes inside enemy towers or phoenixes. Remember that you're always revealed while inside of enemy structures like towers and phoenixes. And while you do always want to be in a bush as Marty, you don't need to. Again, be very wary of the cooldown on this ability, since this grants Marty so many options and allows him to more easily conduct those mind games with his 2-1 combo that we discussed earlier. As an escape though, it ain't great. If you need to escape, of course, use it, but you basically just want to plop the bush in front of you and walk straight through it, or maybe diagonally through it for maximum movement speed. As far as things to save yourself as Marty go, his ultimate is hard to match. Martichoras flies into the air, becoming CC and damage immune while in the air. And while in the air, he fires down 12 projectiles over the course of 3 seconds in a circle AoE, and all enemies in the circle are damaged for every projectile, with 4% protection reduction being applied with each hit, up to 8 times for a total of 32% protections being reduced, and Marty can move while in the air, retaining any movement speed from a bush if he ults from one. So you may be thinking, that's kinda OP, 1200 damage before scaling and you can't even hit him? Yeah, it's kinda OP, but you gotta make the ability count. Obviously, when it comes to using the ability, you have 1 or 2 uses. Use it as a last resort to get out of a bad situation, timing it with an enemy's key CC or damage ability to avoid it. Say when you see a Susano ultimate or a Izanami ultimate about to hit you, you can pop this ultimate to completely avoid it. Don't forget you can easily retaliate with this damage as well though. If any squishy target is at 50% or less, this ability can easily kill them. So as long as they don't use their Aegis on it or are significantly further ahead, you can easily use this to kill whoever was chasing you if they're an assassin, hunter, or mage. But don't forget that it's 3 whole seconds of immunity time, so as long as you aren't too far from your team, if you need to just bolt and run back, it will almost always give you the leeway you need to get back into a safe position. I mean, it's literally double the duration of Aegis. So then the big one becomes, when do you use it during, say, a late game teamfight? Well, for obvious reasons, it's one of the best finishers in the entire game since it can't be body blocked and you can't be punished for using it. And when you're first starting with Marty, it's not a bad idea just to save it to finish off targets during a fight. That said, the ability does so much damage and shreds so many protections that you can actually use it to follow up off of your main engage to start demolishing targets. This is obviously risky though, since your target could again just use an immunity like Aegis or movement ability to just get away from the ability. So you have to be sure to read the situation and ensure your target won't just Aegis immediately, meaning that you have to react quickly before any CC from your other teammates ends to start applying the damage. But even still, if they beat the CC, you can still use this ultimate to always force out an Aegis. Either that, or the target is so low they have to back off and your team gets insane pressure off of it anyways. It's a versatile ultimate, and with that, let's take a look at a few combos with Marty. 2, 1. 1, 2, basic attacks. 3, 1, 2, ultimate. When the game gets later, 2, ultimate, 3, 1. For ability leveling, you want your 1 at level 1, your 2 at level 2, and your 3 at level 3. From there you want to max your 2, your 1, then your 3, leveling the ultimate whenever you can. He leveled the 2 over the 1 since leveling the 1 only really contributes to your wave clear, and to be honest, the 1 does so much damage to the wave when you max it that it's honestly just overkill at that point. You can kill waves just fine leveling the 2 over the 1, but you can't kill gods nearly as well leveling the 1 over the 2. Martichoras is a problem. He clears waves almost as fast as he clears enemy life bars, and when the ultimate isn't the perfect escape, it's still more than sufficient when teamed with all that damage. Plus, those bushes. Good god. Talk about something that makes defending your towers and phoenixes 10 times harder. That said, it's not like Martichoras brings everything to the table. Blowing your ult and either not killing your target or not saving yourself depending on the situation can be very detrimental. Although in the same breath, I have to also point out that Marty has 32% protection reductions at a time when support protection auras are overpowered, so I'd say he makes up for it. Not to mention that if you poke a Marty out, if he's been stacking his passive well, all he needs to do is 1 a wave and half his health is back. And finally, again, the bushes bring something to the table that simply no other god in the game does, and that's always something very powerful when new gods come out and players have to adapt to it. There are certainly gods who can get around it, like Susano, Serket, Bakasur, Vaman, Agni, and even lesser played gods like Zhong and Arachne can use their AoE and or damage over time to track Marty and his teammates, so it's not like he's unstoppable, but at the moment anyways, he comes very close, and he's a hunter you won't want to miss out on. That's all I have on Marty for now. Thanks for watching.